first thing I want to do is kind of briefly talk about some of the expectations of what's going to happen for the next few months. The bulk of the work during those months are going to be done at the subcommittee level. So most of the work, substantive work, I'm hoping, just like any committee, will be done in the subcommittees. I can only expect that we as a committee will meet probably 2 or 3 more times prior to when it is that the subcommittees would report the redistricting bills to us. So this committee will not be meeting on a regular basis throughout the committee process, but the subcommittees will. So over the next few months, I would encourage each of you to pay close attention to what is going on in all the subcommittees. Regardless of whether you serve on one of the subcommittees, we as a group will have to be very critical of the work and the product that comes before us. We are going to have to answer questions like, do the maps pass and meet the requirements of the Federal Voting Rights Act? Do the maps meet the standards of Florida's Amendments 5 and 6? Have the subcommittees really vetted a number of options for those maps? Those are the questions that we're going to have to answer as the maps come to us. And ultimately, whatever exactly the maps look like, we put forth to the entire membership of the House, we as a group have to explain to the entire membership what those plans do and if they meet the requirements both in federal and state law. So just a quick history lesson that we've all heard before, but I think it's worth saying again. How did we get here today? As you all know, over the last several months, we have gathered input from thousands of citizens across Florida regarding where and how congressional and state legislative districts should be drawn. So I mentioned it earlier, but I'm going to hit it again. A couple of the facts. The first is at our 26 hearings, we were in 25 counties, and approximately 5,000 people came to the meetings, and approximately 2,000 actually presented ideas. That is historic. To date, we are in receipt of 64 partial or complete maps from the public. 10 years ago, just for comparison, the legislature only received 4 maps. We've had 64 today. We are also in receipt of more than 200 additional unique suggestions for maps that came to us from social media, emails, letters, faxes. We even got one in a postcard. So we've gotten a lot of feedback that way as well. At this point in the process, our committees will begin digesting all of the information so that members can react, make suggestions, and mesh out the ideas with the legal requirements that the federal and state laws require. Based on this public input, each subcommittee will have more than enough information to prepare committee proposals in addition to any individual member bills that may be offered. My overall request to the subcommittees and to the chairman specifically is this. I would ask that you provide at least 3 complete options for each type of map. Now what that means is that you would send this committee 3 congressional maps, at least 3 Senate maps, and at least 3 options for a State House map. Exactly how each subcommittee meets that goal is up to the member of that subcommittee and the members of that subcommittee and the chairman. But my suggestion would be that you consider 4, 5, 6, or even more complete maps and make it a combination of either member bills or committee bills. Regardless, our staff is available to everyone to help you develop those proposals or the amendments to those proposals. Now let's talk a little bit about the timeline that we're working under and some of the practical suggestions that we have. If the committees are going to report 3 options each to this committee, I would recommend that the members who wish to file redistricting bills, so if you are a member on this committee or on a subcommittee or any member of the legislature and you plan to file a bill, we would ask that you do so before the November 14th committee week. And now I would have to tell you that November 14th also happens to be my birthday. Not that I'm asking you to take notes on that, but you know, there's no coincidence, but it is my birthday. So by my birthday, we would hope that every member of this body has turned in a map, or if you're going to turn in a complete bill, do it by that date. We say this also because it's expected that the subcommittee's workshop on redistricting maps, so that any redistricting maps that can get voted on have time to mature and allow members to look at those bills and really understand them before they're asked to take a vote. So in other words, it is preferred that the votes taken on maps reflect more than one committee meeting in which that map is discussed. So we would like to have those maps be out there for the public and for you to analyze very critically. For the public, I would recommend that members of the public submit any original suggestions for maps before November 1st. Now the reason why we do that, and we ask for November 1st for the public and November 14th for members, is because that gives members the opportunity of about 2 weeks to study those submissions by the citizens before your own suggested deadlines. Of course, we will accept comments and suggestions from the public throughout the process, but practically speaking, Anything received November 1st or thereafter will have to be viewed as more comments and reactions to the maps that we are already working on through the process. Now let's talk a little bit about exceptions to each of you as members. I'm sorry, not exceptions, expectations to each of you as members, and who might present redistricting maps or amendments to maps. Members who would like to submit maps or amendments in committee will be given as much courtesy and as possible to get their ideas on the agenda to be presented. However, it is important to note that members will be expected to explain the details of their maps or their amendments. And so even if you're opting to file a map that has already been offered by the public, what we would ask you to do is, if you're going to submit a map, whether it's an amendment or actual original map, that you be able to explain what that map does, district by district. That's very important. We're going to ask every person who is submitting maps to be able to do that. That helps the process work better. So please know your maps. Also, Representative Atkins, Eisenagel, Fresen, and Jones, since you are on this redistricting committee but you're not on a subcommittee, I would ask that you attend a mix of the subcommittee meetings so that when the redistricting committee meets, those 2 or 3 times prior to receiving maps, you will be able to report to this committee your observations of the big picture issues that the redistricting committee should be prepared to address when it receives those maps from the subcommittees. I may ask you also to brief the redistricting committee on common themes, challenges, and the results of the subcommittee's report. Now, members, regarding the packet that you have in front of you, as you can see, everybody should have one. If you don't have one, raise your hand. In the packet, you will find summaries of the verbal and written testimony that we have received thus far from the first 4 of the 5 regions that we visited this summer. So the Panhandle, Northeast Florida, Central Florida, and Southeast Florida. This is the material that the subcommittees will cover today in their review of public input. In the early October interim committee meeting, the subcommittees will cover a 5th region, the Southwest Florida, as well as we will cover all the complete maps that were submitted to the legislature online. So essentially what we're doing is we've broken this discussion up into 2 interim committee weeks, and we will add Southwest Florida and the other maps for the 2nd week into the packet. In addition, we have included for you in the 5th tab summary level data regarding the first 63 maps that have been submitted from the public. All of this information will be available on the Florida Redistricting website for anyone in the public to review it. Feel free to take all of this information with you today, and note, if you are on one of the subcommittees, you are going to get the same packet again. And just one last note before I turn it over to questions that many of you may have. In the next day or 2, I'm going to be sending out probably a memo to all the members of the House, not just the members of the committee, refreshing everybody about the procedural rules that will guide us as we go through this process. So you'll be getting that as well. I know that was a mouthful, but I think we covered a lot of territory.